Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Autumn had arrived in the island of Sodor, and all the engines were working hard. Henry was working with Edward to help out with passengers and goods trains on his branch line. The bridges have been mended so they can now support bigger engines. One evening, the two engines were resting in the yards at Wellsworth when the Fat Controller arrived.
Good evening, you two. You've both done a good day's work. I'm very impressed.
Thank you, sir.
Now, there's an old line next to the Kirk branch and I intend to restore it and bring holiday makers to the island.
Is this the line that runs by what used to be Dorsalby?
Yes, that's the one by Harwin Lake. Of course, as you know, the hamlet is gone, but the station is still there.
Oh, what's left of it? But no engine has gone there in many years. Is it still safe? I mean, the trees have been dead since I went down that line in 1930.
Ooh, spooky.
Don't worry. We're going to remove all those trees before the line reopens. Now, which one of you would like to take the train there tomorrow night?
I'll do it, sir. Edward seems to be too scared of dead trees in the dark.
No, I'm not.
Very well then, Henry.
And with that, the Fat Controller left.
Why are you so freaked out by just a mention of the line?
I'm not freaked out. I just think it's a bad idea to reopen that line.
Henry laughed and left the yard. That evening as Edward popped into the shed, he found out that Henry had told the other engines about him.
Hello, Edward. Are you scared of the dark?
No. Henry's just telling you rubbish. I'm not scared of the dark. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to go to sleep in my very dark shed.
Henry, Gordon, and James laughed. Thomas and Percy were cross and so was Tillie when she came back the next morning. The three tank engines were alone with Edward. They decided to find out what all the gossip was about.
Edward, if you don't mind me asking, was there something that made Henry think you were scared of that old line? Like, did something happen?
I suppose I can tell the three of you, but don't tell anyone else.
We won't.
Right then. That line is haunted. I went on that line many years ago and can assure you that I saw something strange.
And this was the story Edward told. The year was 1894. The island of Sodor was part of the United Kingdom for many centuries, but there were still a large number of native Sudrek speakers. Most of them are farmers in rural areas. Just off of what is now the Kirk branch, There was a small hamlet next to Hall in Lake called Gorsaflin. It was inhabited by Sudric farmers and was served by a small station. They would load their goods into trucks, and the train would take them to be delivered across the island. For many years, the area was peaceful. That is until a deranged man named Guto Quildrodo became the mayor. He was a native Sudric extremist who hated the British rule of Sodor. He was quite an intimidating man, always dressed in black, and he turned the once peaceful farmer hamlet into what was essentially a radical Sudric cult. He often got into trouble with law enforcement due to his promotion of violent resistance and garnered a fearful reputation with not just local farmers but the government as well. Eventually, he and his henchmen decided that the town was no longer under British rule, and they would ban any outside influence. This included blocking trains from coming in. A simple attempt to negotiate with the authorities led to a gunfight, and although no one was killed, the police gave up. The government of Sodor decided that the only way to solve the matter was to set up a night ambush and take him into custody. The night they picked happened to be one with lots of mist, which gave them the advantage. They snuck onto the line and made their way towards the village. Quildrodo was standing guard at the station. An owl hooted and then he began to hear what sounded like an engine puffing. He grabbed his rifle and leapt onto the tracks. And what happened next is up for debate. Some say he pointed his rifle at the oncoming train, shooting at it, while others say he was shot dead in cold blood. But whatever the story, Quildrodo was shot dead and the town was invaded by British soldiers. No one else was killed, but many were arrested that night, and those who weren't left the village. Quildrodo's reign of terror was over, but the area never fully recovered. When the Norambi branch was built, the small loop branch line around the lake was used less and less until by around 1930, it was completely abandoned, and no one knows why, but the trees started to die off, and now the station sits in a dead forest.
But, what does that have to do with ghosts?
That's what I was just about to tell you. I went down that line one night in 1930 with some workmen, and there was a strong mist, and as I approached the station, an owl hooted and suddenly we heard gunshots. We called out, but there was no reply. Suddenly, the station light turned on. We didn't dare keep going, so we went back. The next day, they searched all around the area, but there was no sign of any bullets. It was when I heard the story and it all started to click. Whenever an owl hoots, the mist rolls in, and legend says that when the mist's about, there's a ghost about too. A ghost of Guto Quildrodo.
The 3 tank engines were speechless.
But do you actually believe there's actually a ghost there? There could be several explanations.
She does have a point. It could be some hunters hunting illegally in that old forest.
I hope I was wrong, but it seems like too much of a coincidence. I don't want to believe in ghosts, but there's something strange on that line. I've never ventured on it since. Needless to say, I'll give Henry a warning tonight. Henry, before you go, there's something you should know about that line.
Oh, what would that be, Edward?
There have been stories and rumours about that lion after the rise of the Great Depression. Whenever that owl hurts, a mist rolls in. The ghost of Guto Quildrodo lurks around the old station, controlling everything around him. The legend says when there's a mist about, there's a ghost about too. Take care, the old line Henry.
A stupid bird, and also rubbish.
Remember what I said, you hear?
But Henry just ignored him.
Owls, mists, ghosts. Edward's going soft with the boiler. There's no mist.
But Henry was wrong. By the time they reached the old line, the fog grew thick and the air grew cold.
Look at that, it's an amber lamp. That means proceed with caution. Who's there?
But no one replied. Henry crept slowly forward. He stopped by a tree. It had a sign nailed to it. Adella was surprised.
No one warned us about that before. And look, the signal's red, and the gates are closed, and there's also a code. But where's its owner?
Then, they saw a light move within the station building.
Ghost? Edward was right!
Something very strange is going on here.
I'm not waiting around to find out.
I think it's best we go back.
So do I. Get me out of here!
By morning, the mist was clear, and a workman was talking about the unsafe viaduct.
Lucky you didn't cross it last night.
Yes, but we don't know who warned us. Do one of your men leave the amber lamp on the train?
I already sent Stanley, Bruno and a few workmen to inspect the line, and he'll give you a call later.
Later that day, Henry told Gordon about what he saw, but Gordon just laughed.
First the rain, an elephant, and now the fog. Whatever will you be afraid of next? Ha 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 ha.
Later that late afternoon, Adella spoke to Henry.
The viaduct has been repaired. Now we can take our train back along the old line tonight.
Henry really didn't want to. But when nightfall came, he was sizzling nicely. Then, an owl hooted, and then Gordon thundered by.
Hold up, Henry's spooked.
Who went?
Be quiet. I'm not scared.
But he was. A little later, the fog came down. As they approached the same area, they saw the amber lamp again.
Here we go.
Then, unknown to Henry, the gates mysteriously closed by themselves, and the signal was red. The trucks had seen everything, and they were spooked.
Faster, there's a ghost about.
Oh no! Stop! Stop!
A mysterious figure watched Henry go by. Ahead, there was a landslide blocking the line. Henry braked hard, but the freight cars hit some of the rubble, and plunged into the ravine. Just then, Adella saw something coming straight towards them.
Well, look at that. It's our ghost. It's Old Bailey, the fagman.
Old Bailey was very angry. I tried to warn you about the viaduct, and you ignored it. And when I tried to warn you about this, why didn't you pay attention? Adella apologized and explained everything that happened. And then, Old Bailey laughed. Oh, I've heard that story millions of times. And I've worked on this line for years and can assure you, there ain't no ghosts. In fact, I believe the sloppy repair work on the viaduct put the unstable ground to the brink. And there was a landslide shortly before you came through, and Henry was confused.
But Edward told me about the paranoid things he experienced when he went down the line. A long time ago, like the gunshots.
You know, my grandfather said people here used to hunt illegally here at night, and I bet that's what Edward heard. Even nowadays people have overrun this place like crazy trying to find that ghost. It's a good thing this place is being restored.
Indeed. Is there anything we can do to thank you?
Well, I'd like to operate that old station, and if you let me, I won't spook Henry again.
Hey, what about us?
Oh, right. Driver, I think you need to call for help.
And in a little while, old Bailey's wish was granted. Thank you, Henry.
You and your station will be very useful. Now let's hear a hearty thankful to the friend list. A. Ghost on the Island.
Everyone laughed and clapped, including Henry, who was the happiest of all.